Nathan Harvey, you in the room? So this was really, you know, one of the tricks, right? Like, if you want to get selected, but like, you know, if you're kind of getting and you actually want to present at a conference, put a really cool name for your title. Like that, like freaks these guys out. Like, oh, I gotta read this now, right? So I'm trying to go to ChefCon. I've been to ChefCon in like 4 years. I started there, and I want to go back, and only because they do this cool thing where Adam Jacob gets a band. And last year they dressed up as Kiss, they did the Ramones, so like I play guitar, I'm like, I want in. So I was gonna like really tease Nathan here that like this is my proposal for the show. So one other thing before I get started, I cracked a tooth over the holidays. So look, you know, I can't do this now, but my kids hated this when we were in public. All I want for Christmas is my 2 front teeth. So there we go. All right, DevOps, what a long, strange trip. I put in some markers just to put a perspective of kind of technology. So along the way, I'm going to kind of say this was here, this was here. I'm not going to spend too much time on it, except that I think for those people who are new to this, if you're looking at Chef, Puppet, or Ansible, it's important to know that Mark Burgess in 1993 really invented the whole genre of infrastructure as code, convergence, all that stuff. And actually, Luke Kanice, the founder of Puppet Labs, was actually an active, very active Cfengine user, and just got frustrated by the user interface and rewrote the whole thing, but maintained all those principles of convergence, desired state, all those things, right? AWS, just as a mark in 2006. For me, you know, and this is through my lens, sorry, I'm the presenter, I get to use my lens, of what this thing has looked like, and it's kind of past, present, future. I was doing a bunch of Tivoli work for about 10 years, large enterprise infrastructure stuff. Sold my company, had a non-compete, so I looked at open source solutions, I was looking at Nagios, things like that. Like what were the things that went along with the proprietary IBM stuff. And a friend of mine said, you need to go to OSCON in Portland. And like I was so, you know, I mean, the first hour in a fight with Tim O'Reilly about something, the second hour in a fight with Mark Shuttleworth, like that's what I do, right? So anyway, but like I had no idea, like I really don't know what's going on. And somebody says to me, hey, you need to go see this presentation called Puppet. Like that's a silly name. And then he said, what does it do? He said, monitoring. I'm like, all right, let's go. Like had nothing to do with monitoring. I'm in the back of the room, and now I'm going to use literary license throughout this whole thing. So, you know, I just got through like 10 years of working with JP Morgan Chase, doing infrastructure at a large place. That was horrible. It was a terrible way to do this. But I thought like I knew it all, right? Like, and I see this pimply-faced kid, and he really wasn't pimply-faced, but in the front of the room talking about this new tool configuration manager. I'm like, what could this guy know? I've been, you know, at that point at least 25 years in the industry. Been the largest enterprise, and this is some kid that's been running around in colleges and implementing some technology. I would say less than 10 minutes I'm in the front row, and my life has changed, right? Because I realized everything I had done was like false, wrong. This was the right way to do this. I spent the next couple of years begging. Mind you, I'm not, I guess I am bragging. I'd say I don't brag, but I am bragging, but I'm not bragging. I haven't had to beg for a job pretty much my whole career, except for about a 2-year period where I literally grabbed onto Luke's leg and said, please hire me, and he wouldn't. But you know, the thing was, you know, I wrote a bunch of blog articles about, you know, like infrastructure 2.0. This is the way we need to do this. This other guy pinged me, called Adam Jacob, said, and by the way, he was a Power Puppet user doing incredible infrastructure on bare metal with Puppet, and said, oh, you want to hear a Puppet story? And I got to know Adam, and we started learning a bunch of things, and you know, and he was, you know, at that time he wasn't really starting Chef yet, but he was getting some really good ideas of what was going on. And you got to realize the cloud at this point is like now actually getting pretty ingrained in startups, right? It's, you know, starts 2006, but by this point, like any startup is, in fact, the VCs are telling you that you know that you can't, you know, don't even come to us with a pitch that doesn't talk about sure which came first, the Velocity 2009, O'Reilly Velocity, or Andrew. I mean, I guess I'm lazy. I could have looked it up, but I'm going to say it was Andrew Schaefer. You know, I'm going to use this. It's probably totally inaccurate, but I'm going to call them archetypes of people that are just so important in this DevOps realm. And the only thing about me, my only value is I connect smart people with other smart people. That's what I do. Like, I'm really not that smart. But I can explain why you should listen to this really smart person. And Andrew is one of these people. And so I listened to Andrew. He was in a podcast. It had to be early 2009 with Michael Kata and another guy named Israel Gatt. It's called The Agile Executive. And I'm listening to it, and I knew Andrew already a little bit because he was an early founder of Puppet. And he starts talking about agile infrastructure and agile operations. And I had actually shadowed somebody in a little bit of agile work. A friend of mine ran a development team at BMC. And I started to learn just a little bit about agile. I'm like, oh my God. And I was driving my car, and I almost ran off the side of the road. And I called up Andrew. I'm like, what the hell is this? And he said, well, there's some dude in Belgium that's doing a bunch of stuff. So I spent a bunch of months trying to find this dude, and I'll talk about that dude in a little bit. But probably, you know, what's significant, see, isn't this cool you go like this? Is Velocity 2009. So most people, I don't know how many people are kind of familiar with the kind of, we call it kind of the landmark presentation in DevOps, John Allspaw's. Okay, so not a lot of people, you should go back and watch it, Velocity 2009. And Bridget, you're in my presentation. Basically, I was there, and he talked about how we do 10 deploys a day at Flickr to production. Now again, literally licensed. I'm in the back room. I think there were people throwing up. You can't do this. You know, my God, you'll destroy the universe, right? Like this can't be. You know, and I'm telling you, like we joke, right? Like 2,000, billions, right? It definitely is a landmark. And John is, just like Andrew, again, one of these kind of, again, I'm going to use the word probably incorrectly, but I can't find a better word, an archetype for our industry, right? And I'll tell you his arc, which is amazing through this history. And somebody help me on the timing. I normally use a presentation, like if I'm at 15 or 20, that would be awesome. Good. I have no idea where I am time-wise. What was really interesting, too, is everybody in like the history of DevOps talks about John's presentation, and it was amazing. But there were two other phenomenal presentations at that event. And one, again, Andrew Schaefer, we talked about agile infrastructure. Unfortunately, it wasn't recorded. The presentation is out there, and I can get you links to all this stuff. And he set the groundwork. I mean, John blew everybody's mind that there was a way that you can do something. And in fact, one of the slides that's been used quite heavily is this kind of Spock, Spock and Scotty, like the DevOps, right? A little bit weird. She's close to the boss, thinks too hard, and the other guys go pull his levers, get yells, scream them out, right? That was his metaphor for Operation DevOps. But Andrew really laid it out, like as Andrew does, very well. I'm a big fan of Andrew for so many reasons, but he just laid it out in a way that was, not shock and awe. It was just a very good, and I'll come back to something that was really important that came out of that presentation that almost everybody in the industry is taking credit for, that Andrew didn't get credit for. And then just kind of coincidentally, there was this other one with Adam Jacob and can people hear me because I'm walking away from the mic? Okay. Adam Jacob and Ezra, and I can never pronounce his last name, but the founder of Nygard. They're sitting there, and I knew Adam, and I knew a little bit what was going on with the chef thing. He was just getting it started. The first thing in the presentation, he says, I want you to run this command. It's a curl something like chef.sh. And he's like, trust me, we won't kill your computer. And literally he does this, and you gotta realize, I mean, like you've all seen Kelsey Hightower, or you see people now who do demos, like insane demos in their presentations, but like you didn't see that back then. You just didn't see this no holds bar. And he literally, okay, sure, Mac, bang, and like literally walked you through like building web servers and infrastructure. It was mind blowing. Like it was, mean, the first time people used cloud, that was mind-blowing. The fact that you were sitting there in a presentation and you would just, oh yeah, blah, 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 hit enter again, blah, 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 open up this file, look at it, blah, blah, blah. And you like had an Apache web server and all this stuff, and it was like, oh my God. Like, it was so simple, right? And, you know, Chef got started. You know, there's, you know, one of the real history points was the first DevOpsDays in Ghent. It was actually a DevOps day. That was that, like, so for me, it was like that guy that Andrew said I had to track down. I finally got hold of him. His name was Patrick Devops. He was running this event. And, you know, there were some other side stories about him and Andrew at an earlier Agile. I'll skip that for now. But, so it was this thing, and I finally got a hold of him. He says, yeah, well, we're running this event. At the time, I was at Canonical, and I was actually working with Simon Wardley. We were doing something terrible, really just horribly terrible. We were taking Eucalyptus, this is pre-OpenStack, and Eucalyptus, which was, at the time, a terrible product. And we were calling it Ubuntu Enterprise Cloud, which was terrible. I mean, you prayed to get the thing started, sorry, it just was terrible. But I was a good evangelist, so I gave a presentation there, and it was called I Ain't Pretty, but I Sure Can Dance. And, but it was an interesting renaissance. There were 40, maybe 50 people. In my memory, it was 40. You look at the list, it says 50. I don't know. I think it was close to 35 or 40. But it was a group of people, and you gotta remember, I've been doing like a lot of years of this large-scale, crusty enterprise stuff. You know, I'm starting to hear about Chef and all this stuff, but I think it's like just young people that were so energetic about a new way to do this thing. And from there, you know, actually Lindsay Holman went to Sidney and started the DevOps movement there. Stephen Nelson Smith, Ari Paneer, some other people I'm probably forgetting went to the UK. I was the lone wolf. I came back and decided, the time I was actually working for Chef at this point, I was actually early in at Chef, and my boss was one of the organizers of Velocity, and we decided to run in Mountain View, in conjunction with Velocity, a DevOpsDays in the US. And a couple of interesting points, right? So how many people have been to Velocity? Right? It's about 3 days of like pounding technical stuff. And one of the things we were really worried about was, like, if you do 3 days of Velocity and then you do 2 days of DevOps, are you going to be totally burned out from just too much? And like, so we debated, should we do it before or not? We decided to do it after. I remember like at 3 o'clock on the end of the event, there were still 275 people in the room, and they were just as passionate as they were at the first day of Velocity. Like, I knew something was freaking happening. And again, to put it in perspective, this was 300 people, not 40 people. Less than 6 months later. And Damon Edwards and I, we do a DevOps Cafe podcast. Don't listen to it because we're so lazy. You're just going to yell at me next time you see me because you're going to say, hey, when's the next time you're going to do it? And I'm going to apologize. So, but anyway, we're really bad at turning this into any type of normal business, but we've been doing it for about 8 years. We decided to just talk about that event. It was such a I mean, the DevOps Day Ghent was interesting. I mean, it was, I'm going to use a religious metaphor. You know, and I don't want to offend anybody, but like it was like Christianity was created in Ghent, but Constantine and the Holy Roman Empire like happened in Mountain View. And I can't tell you, like that was real, because there it just blew. It blew up. You had Velocity, you had people there, and we actually came up with this accidental acronym in trying to describe ourselves what happened, called CAMS, Culture, Automation, Measurement, Sharing. Over the years, it's been modified by just humbly CLAMS or CAMS, whatever you want. You know, actually in 2015, I did a state of DevOps, and I'll talk about complexity a little bit later. But I really rethought about what CAMS really meant. Which was really kind of a feedback loop, or if you want to get real technical, cybernetic feedback loop, that it really is about continuation or continuous, culture is continuous improvement, automation is, the A is kind of continuous delivery or continuous integration, measure is really a form of learning, continuous learning, and the sharing is the virtuous cycle that you share internally, and in fact, I'll have some data about DevOpsDays. Externally is really, the beauty about about DevOps is we've really blended the internal and external, right? Like, you know, back in my day, like, people just wouldn't share in your organization. If you were a bank, you didn't show up and say, let me tell you how we're doing things. In fact, in the early days, Google wouldn't tell you anything. Facebook started showing up really early and like, hey, we run this, we're running that, and here's a cool open source tool. Like, the thing about what was awesome about DevOps is, like, it was part of a precondition to coming. I mean, it wasn't a rule, but if you were going to work for, like, Barclays or a bank, you were going to come up and, like, people say, hey, what did you do for that? We really can't tell you what we use for our marketing solution. You know, like, you know, I mean, it happens periodically, but, and then you see all the stickers on the back, and you're like, oh, yeah, okay, I know exactly what it is. This was an icon. If I said why Andrew Schaefer is so important, you know, he kind of started this, and you started seeing this all over the place. And I was even guilty. I had forgotten that I was in his presentation, and he's the one that created it. I actually attributed it at one point to another person who wrote a blog. But he had this idea of the wall of confusion, right? Which was the greatest metaphor for DevOps. You know, Dev and Ops, and Dev throws it over the wall, and Ops like, God, here it comes again. And then like, you guys screwed up. No, it was y'all, you know, and back and forth, right? And like, what we started thinking about, like, is how do we crush that wall? What is that wall in our organization? You know, it's behavior, it's culture. And then over time, people are like, we need to rename DevOps. No, it's a metaphor. Dev and Ops, there's a wall between groups, like, and I'm a hypocrite on that, but let's save that till later. Jenkins came along, and then, you know, there are other architects types in our industry, and one of these guys is John Allspaw. Right, we saw him back in his 10 deploys a day at Flickr. And, I don't know, you know, I'm trying to keep the dates, 2011, 2010-ish. Actually, Ben Black, who was actually one of the progenitors of Amazon's web services, little history thing, Chris Brown actually created it, but he tweeted this interesting paper called How Complex Systems Fail by a doctor, an anesthesiologist called Dr. Richard Cook. And at that time, Richard Cook was not involved in IT at all. He was who really thought about the complexities of system thinking in patient care. And so John wrote this blog article, and you can find John's kitchen soap, it's all there. And he talked about, like, oh my God, like, this is so IT and web operations. Like, he's listing these things about, like, complex systems and how they fail. And then, you know, John later included it in a book called Web Operations. Interesting book, a chapter book. Had it come out 6 months later, it would have been called DevOps-Web Operations. It's got chapters from John, it's Dr. Cook's in it, and Andrew Schaefer, Patrick, Adam Jacobs, I said already. Eric Rees, Lean Startup. And John continued like this. You started seeing John's passion here of this whole nother industry of people who thought about babies dying in hospitals and how do you get to the bottom of this? How do you do systems thinking, airplane crashes? How do you actually just not say, oh, pilot error, done, right? Like, how do you get, like, a large body of work, right, that I can't explain here in, like, a couple of minutes. But then he wrote another article about release engineering, and he introduced this guy named Sidney Dekker, who is really a student of a whole bunch of people that are really serious about this, including somebody called Dr. Woods. Sorry I'm throwing out a lot of names out there. But Dr. Woods, by the way, was one of the people who was involved in the Columbia postmortem. Right, this is serious stuff. And John was basically telling us, pay attention, folks. This is so relative to large-scale web operations. Act 2, this freaking whale shows up. God dang it. Got to screw everything up. But actually, I'm going to run out of time, so I got to go real quick on certain things. And I talked about this before. Late 2012, a couple of people pinged me and said, you know, I know you're an evangelist. I know you like, you know, bleeding technology. You need to talk to this kid, another kid. And I was like, oh shit, I need another kid to change my life again, right? But I did actually talk to this kid, Solomon Hope. Like, God, my brain is fried these days. And this was before anybody really knew about like what Docker was. They were actually a company called .cloud. And I spoke to him, we had a lot of conversations, and I was like, okay, I gotta be honest with you, I didn't think it was going to be like it turned out to be. But I knew it was the next chef. For me, mentally. Like, this was another, oh my God, like, containers, this is going to be different. Like, it's another layer of, like, getting rid of cruft and all this stuff, right? So I got it. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I was at a company that got sold to Dell. I was actually bartering for first man in at what was going to be Dekker. And, you know, like another presentation, I want to talk about all the mistakes I've made in my life. I mean, we can have fun with that. But I dropped out, but it was a bird in the hand. I made pretty good money selling a company to Dell. Moving on, this is one that most people haven't heard about. Actually, Dave Zwiebak, like, there's been 3 rounds of organizers here, and this is the latest. But Zwiebak and gang were part of the last generation. And Dave's out now at Facebook, and he's living the dream. He's doing SRE at Facebook. He's pretty awesome. I got to visit him recently there. But he wrote this article for O'Reilly and said that DevOps is this thing called ICE. You know, and like the CAMS thing, we never created that to be like, hey, stop making acronyms. We own the acronyms. Like, that wasn't the point, right? And it did stick a little. But one of the things I loved about this is he said that DevOps is really inclusivity, complexity, and empathy. And this was around the time, again, I was asked to, used to be people invite me to do a state of the DevOps, right? And I would just go and give any presentation I wanted. And then the DevOps Chicago folks said, hey, John, we want you to do state of DevOps, but like, I really want you to do state of DevOps this time. Like, oh shit, all right. And I started, and this was right about the time this came out, and I thought about, like, okay, what's going on with inclusivity, right? We have DevOpsDays growing. I mean, this is my really, I have a better chart than this than Ashton done, but for, you know, Ashton did all this. This is, like, awesome for me. The woman over there is doing the graphics. But you see there was some hockey sticks between 12 and 13, right? And some of the hockey sticks were the DevOpsDays events were happening all over the world. There was a DevOps survey going on through Puppet Labs and Gene Kim. And like you started seeing, like, we were expanding more people, more cities. The DevOps survey was getting more data about what we're doing right. You know, for me personally, this is about the time I met Bridget. And Bridget, you changed my life too, right? For a number of reasons. In fact, there's some really interesting history in this about DevOpsDays New York, right? So in 2000, I think it was probably 14. I get a little confused on the timelines, but we were starting to organize the next Silicon Valley DevOpsDays. I was a local organizer at for a couple of years. And we were like, okay, you know what? We suck. We need to get more diversity. We need to get a better plan. We need to like roll up the sleeves. Actually, Jennifer Davis came in and became an organizer. We're like, okay, you know what? Like, we're going to be better at this than just doing all male conferences, right? Which is, we didn't know any better. You know, I could play the I'm 58 game, but I saw Bridget's presentation here in New York, actually in here, I'm pretty sure, and it was an Ignite talk. I'm like, shit, I got somebody who'll be awesome. And we invited Bridget, and of course she was awesome, and anybody knows Bridget knows she is always perpetually and eternally awesome. And so that was kind of a thing there where we started thinking more about, like, not running all male agendas. Fortunately, it happens still. The enterprise started getting involved. I started working on networking, got me in all sorts of trouble. So networking, security started happening. We're talking about the Rugged Manifesto. Another interesting thing, code of conduct, right? You saw that this morning. Now, I go by my memory until somebody tells me I'm wrong. But I'm pretty certain that Andrew Schaefer is the one that instigated this. From confirmation, it was Pittsburgh, and Andrew wrote the first one and said, you know, hey, this is bullshit. We need to actually have a code of conduct, and that became, now it is mandatory on any DevOpsDays to have a code of conduct. So there you go, Andrew Schaefer. What else happened? Oh, so I was talking about, you know, ICE, inclusivity, right? We've done a pretty good job. I mean, complexity is a long-standing thing, and we were really starting as an industry, I think. One of the things good at DevOps, like, we're really good at trying to look at other places. And, you know, we had Richard Cook's How Complex Systems Fail. Mark Burgess had written an amazing book, incredibly hard to read, called In Search of Certainty, which, like, literally, I got a laugh out there. You read it? say, like, if you don't know what the plank length is, be prepared to open up a gazillion Google pages to read other stuff. But it's an incredible book, right? And I didn't know, by the way, what a plank length was. So, but he covers complexity, and there's some other places, you know, systems thinking, you know, other areas. But there was a whole push, cybernetics, and then going back to ICE. This is one of those ones where you're like, shit, I wish I would have wrote that article. Jeff Sussner wrote an article that, you know, empathy is the essence of DevOps. And he's like, oh my God, yes. Like, if we want one word, like all right, Ross, gun to your head, give me one word, DevOps. It's empathy, right? You know, and he nailed it, and it really, I mean, when you think about everything, and I've talked a little bit more about this, but it's all about empathetic transactions. In fact, in the early days of DevOps, we talked about embedded engineers. How do you take ops and put them in a dev group? You know, you saw a lot of push of blamelessness, retrospectives, blameless retrospectives, right? All that stuff, right? It's all empathetic transactions, right? You know, just again, my lens. I remember reading Jennifer Davis and Catherine Daniels' Effect of DevOps, and this is where I got to be a little honest. I was a little worried they were going to beat me to the market with a book I was working on with Gene, and they did. And Gene, and I read it, and Gene, you know, Jennifer sent me her copy, and I'm like, okay, you know, is the industry ready for 2 DevOps type books? Oh my God, you know, is it really that big? And I read it, and I remember going back to Gene, like they covered a whole different subject than us. It was, and at the time I liked it. You know, like I was saying, I liked it. And then, about 2 years ago, I actually wrote a course, Introduction to DevOps from Linux Foundation. It's out there. It's free. And I wanted to cover, it was originally going to just be about this DevOps handbook that I'm involved in, but I wanted to cover more. I wanted to cover guys like Sussner and Andrew and all these things we didn't cover in the handbook. And I went back and I read Effect of DevOps, and I realized, no, it's not a good book. It's a fucking great book. And you know, again, it's one of the reasons why I think diversity works. You know, because it was, their perspective was just different than 4 freaking guys that wrote the DevOps handbook. Now, I think DevOps handbook is a really good book. It's my book, so, but take that with a grain of salt. But I love this book, and I covered it in deep. It's like one of those things when you're going to cover it, you're going to really read it. And they just talked about you know, heroes, and it was a really good angle to understand. So I think it's a must read in our industry. I mean, it came to the conclusion at some point that really, whether you call it ICE or not, that there's this umbrella of empathy that it creates an umbrella of inclusion and complexity. Inclusion is listening and learning, like looking for other areas, other people. Complexity is really just giving up deterministic thinking. Hubris. I know that system will look like this. Well, but no, it will. You know, we start embracing a notion of that we can understand complex adaptive systems because they change so freaking fast. So it is another form of empathetic or empathy in that we embrace complexity not as just cool words, but we actually start thinking about systems and not in a world where we think we can turn a knob and it shall look like this in a given moment. We start embracing a whole different notion, which, by the way, is covered very well in Mark's book about probabilities and how physics people do that stuff. Anyway, moving on. Then I say, this is what I was going to do some audio and stuff, but I was going to do Anderson, but the full screen. You know, GCAM comes in. Now, he'd been in it a while. He was actually on a panel in the DevOpsDays 2010. But I guess the Phoenix Project will be 5 years in February. You know, how many people read the Phoenix Project? Right, a lot. Yes, it's a novel. It's a rewrite of an old novel from Goldratt. I mean, it put a stake in the ground in our industry. You know, and at the time I met Gene. This was a 10-year thing that he was working on, and I remember I met him about 6 years in, and me and Patrick were talking about, this is a novel, right? So at the end of the novel, we're like, awesome, then what do I do? Hey, screw you. So we started talking about like creating a prescriptive guide to that novel, and and you know, it's one of those like do as we say, not as we do, because it took us 5 years to write it. But it became a book, and then Jez got involved really early too, and we really tried to create this guide with case studies, and there's like 50 case studies. I mean, at least 30 of them are enterprise, ugly enterprise. I mean, not just, oh, we did DevOps and everything was glorious. I mean, just a little, it's a little over a year old, 100,000 copies sold. Phoenix is breaking 400,000 now. I did a thing on burnout. I mean, I'll just point you to the blog article. In fact, going back to New York, I had written this article. Some young man committed suicide in the LA DevOps community, and it tore me up. It took me off the grid, basically. I asked Gene if I could write a blog article on his website, and he did. It kind of escalated into a lot of great discussions. And in fact, the DevOps organizers invited me to do the keynote on it here. I think it was the last DevOpsDays here. Another thing that was interesting, John Allspaw had pointed out this thing called the Ron Westrum model. The reason this is important, in fact, today John says he wishes he would have never introduced this, which is another longer discussion. But Ron Westrum is a sociologist that basically looked at organizational culture, not IT. And he looked at organizations in 3 categories: pathological, bureaucratic, and generative. You know, just in summary, generative is kind of blameless, faster, you know, learning organizations. Pathological, blameful. But what happened is, in 2015, that DevOps survey, Jez Humble had read this, along with Nicole Forsgren, who is actually a PhD statistician, psychometrician. They used this for the survey. So now they didn't just ask you questions like, do you use Chef? Do you deploy 80 billion times a day, right? They actually ask you questions about who gets in trouble, fire, oh shit, 10 minutes, all right. I thought you were going to say 20 or 30. One of the things that really happened was interesting. We saw that, this interesting thing that the generative cultures were 200 times faster at producing software than the pathological. But what was really satisfying was they were more resilient. Empty target higher. Boy, I can't even talk about Ross. Yeah, I mean, you know, one of the things that came up a lot was, can the enterprise do this? I remember watching the first Minnesota DevOpsDays streaming, and I saw Ross and Heather. I'm like, gotcha, everybody else. You can do DevOps without compromising into DevOps. And that's basically where I met Ross. A couple more things. I thought I was going to have more time. Ben Rockwood in 2011 had this amazing presentation called Transformation DevOps, and ultimately convinced me that it all started with Deming. I went back and I really tried to learn everything I could about Deming, and he was right. Like, Ben Rockwood is this good-looking, handsome, great father, reads like 80 books a week, is smart as shit, and he wears a kilt. I mean, like, what else can you, like, not love about this guy, right? And he got me really thinking about this whole thing, and primarily, I can't recommend higher like, skip every other Lean book that exists, honestly. You don't need to read them, honestly. I wouldn't have said this about a year ago, but read, if you want to learn Lean and understand how it relates to DevOps, it's Mike Roth's Kata, and then right after that, read Steven Spear's High Velocity Edge. The learning, again, Andrew Schaefer comes back, and he introduces another landmark presentation at Velocity called, basically, There Is No Talent Shortage, and I'll just leave you with this. This was recorded. He talks about learning, and he says that, and this is the best quote in DevOps to date, you are either building a learning organization or you will be losing to one. There's things about Kananahan and some great stuff. It got me thinking about DevOps. I tried to think about how would I present this to an executive. I came up in my own mind that DevOps is a set of practices and patterns that turn human capital into organizational. Today, I'm really focusing on this DevOps Kaizen, security, DevSecOps. At RSA early last year, I saw a presentation by Aetna, and it kind of changed me from thinking about rugged to DevSecOps in that it was about filling in all the buckets. And again, I wish I had more time here. And I've done a bunch of presentations on this. Like, if you think about the original, you look at the bottom there, the kind of the original kind of CI supply chain. What was for the first time, and this is why I side I want to get involved is a systemic or a systems approach where developers take ownership. I've written these presentations, you build it, you secure it, where the developers take full ownership of security, and in the end, a bug is a bug is a bug is a bug, right? And so you start creating the same gates that you create, and you have to cover all the buckets. You can't just shim in behavior and vulnerability scanning. I mean, literally, if you want to shift left, like you do with software, security is software, you have to have all those buckets in there. And again, you can find this stuff. I do want to talk about this. So I was in a cybersecurity thing about 3 or 4 months ago, and they had this hacker. He's in another room. They disguise his face and all. And he was basically making fun of us. And he said that, you know, he gets paid big money to go into banks and hack these banks, right? And he'd go do reconnaissance, and he was basically saying, you know, you're all a bunch of stupid idiots, right? Because he said that 4 of the last 5 breaches, he'd basically tailgate to get in, right? Because somebody held the door open. And he was doing the morning keynote, I was doing the evening keynote, and I actually changed my presentation. I thought about, like, we talk about culture, we talk about behavior, and if you look at the cyber world, the cybersecurity, like, we spend like ridiculous amount of money on perimeter and all this stuff. And we talk about culture, but we get disconnected. And I started thinking about the felonious, you know, something from a Bill Bryson book, like this idea of the felonious, divine and felonious nature of things, right? And Bill Bryson has in this book he wrote, where he says that there was, at a time, when the last couple of dodo birds on the planet were being shot by just a couple of sailors that were just for no reason other than for fun. They were putting into extinction the last couple of dodo birds. Literally at that same time, Isaac Newton was finishing Principia, right, which was changing everything about what we thought about the world. And he said in here, he said, I would submit to you to find a better pairing of occurrences to illustrate the divine and flawless nature of a human being as an origin. Basically, he was saying, like, my God. And I think about, like, what do you do for culture? You spend $1 billion. Because one of the things that hacker didn't understand was he had never worked in a large corporation for 5, 10, 15 years. Because what happens when, you know, Tom or somebody's coming in after me and like, he's 2 paces away, and I let the door slam. Now, Tom wouldn't do this. But they're like, you asshole, John, you know who I am. And so over the years, you get so, Diane Vaughn calls this the normalization of deviance. Like, you just get to a point where, like, you know what, I'm tired of getting yelled at. I know every year there's the poster that we're not supposed to do this. But what do? You hold the door open. And so I thought about, I added this to my presentation. Here is, it's February. It's raining. Actually, it's Atlanta. It's horrible. And it's snowstorm. And Susie is pregnant with a bunch of boxes in her hand. And she's 2 paces behind you. And you let the door slam. Right? And you're like, okay. But you wait. Because you're a gentleman and you're a good person, right? And Susie comes through and badges in. And you're waiting and she says, John, I want to so thank you. Because you just, you remember this hacker told, I didn't tell you, the hacker said 4 out of 5 breaches, like, got in through tailgate. Comes in, puts a Raspberry Pi on an empty cube, and it's got you. I'm like, we spent $1 billion, or we get to a culture where this situation, the person says, I want to thank you because you made us stronger, you've guarded us against our adversaries, right? I said that John is an archetype. If you look at DevOps Enterprise Summit, what he's doing now at Stanford, he's taken, through his thesis, he's totally embraced us in resilience and safety. Some future things, if you haven't seen Simon Wardley's mapping, it's cool stuff. It fits a specific domain. Adrian Kata over at Amazon is using it for strategic. James Urquhart, you may or may not know, is also using it strategic. There are some really prominent people using this stuff. If you know anything about Cynefin, it fits into the complicated domain. And then I'll just end with something that I've been pretty passionate about. I'm calling it my atom smashing project. And so we've learned a lot from Lean. And John has introduced a lot of heavy hitters in resilience human factors. One of the things I found out over the last couple of years, they don't really kind of like each other. John would disagree. They definitely don't talk to each other, and they don't collaborate. And so I went to Gene, I'm like, I want to kind of atom smash this because there's so much commonality between resilience and faith and stuff that Rother talks about and Steven Spears. So at DevOps Enterprise Summit, we invited Sidney, Dekker, Steven Spears, who are both, well, Dekker and Cook, or Dr. Cook, as resilience people, and Steven Spears as the Lean. We did a 4-hour videotape thing, and for the first 3 hours, they were actually rude, mean. It was incredible. By the last hour, it was like a glorious agreement, and what you will see publicly now, we're going to actually introduce a lot of the video later, is a panel that's online where they're like hugging each other and kissing, and I want to do this more with the academia specifically. So me and Gene have been working on a project. It's an audio-only book called Beyond the Phoenix Project that's going to be out basically in February, where we're going to cover that. We're covering a whole bunch of stuff. It's 5 years after Phoenix Project. All right, so, and, so that's me and Gene. So one last thing I will say is diversity is hard for us old white guys. I thought I was good. I thought I was good. You notice there's all male. And, I didn't think about, when people asked me to be on panels and stuff. And last year was a tough year for me. Because I got beat up really bad. And I thought I was, I'm not sexist. I'm not, I get diversity, but I still sucked at it. And I didn't even know that. And I was on a couple all-male panels, and I got called out. And one, I got real defensive, and had a nervous breakdown, to be honest with you. But the truth is, I made a pledge. I'm not going to go to any conference that's all male. We'll speak all male. I will not speak on any freaking panel that's all male. And the last 3 panels I've been asked to be, I've either rejected, and it's the right thing to do. And if you don't understand that, then go talk to somebody else. But you had to come through this horrific tunnel for me to realize I wasn't really as good as I thought I was. But it did, again, change me. And I think as males, it's so easy to go, oh, I'm going to get a panel, that's awesome. You gotta, I'm done. You gotta, hey, I did it, right? Hey, thank you.